Okay, students, we're going to go over a couple of these problems on each side. In this first section, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 or 6 for each one, and 1 through 3. You are to identify whether the triangles are congruent by SAS, AAS, SSS, ASA, HL, or if there's not enough information, you write NEI, and you will have a quiz on this coming up very shortly. Okay, so you need to make sure you understand what each of these look like. Now, I'm going to also ask throughout this time as well if there is a question that I will ask. Come on, let's get that out of there. There we go. Is there a free part that you can get on your own? Okay, there are 2 common free parts in triangles that you can get on your own. One is a common side that they share, such as that one right there if we're doing this problem. Okay, each of those triangles have that side in common. Notice it wasn't marked, but you can mark that on your own whenever they have a shared side in common. And then I will ask, what's the justification for that? And the answer is the reflexive property of congruence. I will let you just say reflexive property, but technical definition, reflexive property of congruence. And you can write, if you're writing it out when it comes to the proofs, you can just write reflexive property. If you want to write of congruence, you can write it like that. Okay, so you don't have to write everything all out. All right, so if we finish off that problem, do I have, if I look at the top triangle here, I have an SAS. But in the bottom triangle, do I have SAS? No, I do not. I have an SSA. Remember, there is no SSA. So this answer would be NEI. Not enough information. Okay, the other one that you can get on your own, free, is vertical angle theorem. Now, why did I put 2 arcs on both of those? Because we've already used 1 arc up in that drawing. Notice there's a 1 arc there and a 1 arc there, so I need to go up to 2 arcs. If you only draw 1 arc, you get marked wrong, because then you'd be saying those vertical angles have to be congruent to the other angles, and that is not the case. I guess I just can't erase that. I'm trying to get this to erase. Come on, there we go. Okay. So now I look at what I have here. Notice I have AAS and AAS. Remember, I told you the AAS is the tricky one because it depends where the S is. Notice in this one here, change colors here. The S in this triangle is next to the 2 hash marks are next to the double angle, and it is the same with that triangle as well. So AAS does work. Okay, for that. All right, let's go ahead and move down to the bottom part. It says write down the additional piece that must be known to make the triangles congruent by the way given. Okay, we'll pick another one. We'll do this first one. Remember, HL stands for hypotenuse leg. You only have a hypotenuse and a leg in a right triangle, which you can see both these are right triangles. And of course, that means the hypotenuse of both of them have to be congruent, and then one of the legs must be congruent. So it says, write down the additional piece I need. Well, obviously I have the hypotenuse, I need one of the legs. So an additional piece would be segment DF is congruent to segment VX. Okay, and then notice it says mark the additional piece. So you have to write down what the additional piece is, and I must mark it on the drawing, both, not one or the other, both. And therefore, I followed directions correctly. Now I have HL. Now I want you to remember, we just started corresponding order. So corresponding order counts. So when I wrote DF, notice I started with the right angle and went out to the F. So that means over here I must start with the right angle, and that's why I wrote VX. Even though XV is the same thing, if I would have written XV, I would have been marked wrong because I didn't put it in corresponding order. We talked about this in class, okay? Corresponding order must be in corresponding order. Okay, so it tells you by which way it must be done. AAS, for example, in this one, or ASA in that one. Now remember, you can get, on some of these, you can get a free piece. That free piece does not count as the additional piece that they must give you. So all of these, if you only see one piece given, such as, let's just take the AAS one right here. Okay, notice I have in the bottom triangle, I have an A and an A. Okay, in the top triangle, I only have one A right there. But don't forget, I have vertical angles right there. I get that free, vertical angle with him. That doesn't count as a needed piece. So now I have the A in both of them. Okay, now I need it to be an S. Okay, so the S can be in one of two places. I could put the S here, okay, which is outside of the right triangle, and that would correspond with that one right there. And so if I did that, I could call that segment CE must be congruent to CV. When I write it down, I'll write down that one, segment CE congruent to segment CV. So that's one potential answer. The other one, if I go ahead, I'm going to erase that. So if you want to write that down, you can pause it if you want to use that one. I'm going to erase it. And the other way I could have used AAS is if I used AAS down there and then AAS there next to the single arc. Both of those are AASs. So if I'm using this AAS, I could say segment UV is congruent to what? If I start the 1 and go to the 0 arc angle, then I'm going to start the 1 arc angle down here, D, and go to the 0 arc angle, E, to put it in corresponding order. So now I've written down and I've marked that extra piece that must be given to me in order to satisfy the AAS. Okay, so that is that side. Now let's go to the other side. And so you're going to have a quiz basically just on this worksheet, front and back. All the problems that are here, you're going to have it just like that on a 10-problem quiz. Okay, so you need to make sure you know this worksheet inside and out. Okay. Now we talked about corresponding order. Remember, this is called a congruence statement. Notice they have it right here. Complete each congruent statement by naming the corresponding side or angle. This angle or side. Okay, remember this whole thing is called a congruent statement. This would be a congruent statement, something congruent to something else as well. But oftentimes when you talk about a congruent statement, you'll refer to the entire triangle being congruent to the other triangle. And this is just a piece of it that you're filling in. So remember, that means D corresponds with K, E is congruent to J, and F is congruent to I. Okay, and then the corresponding sides. So here it says FD. FD is 3 and 1. So it must go in the same order. 3 and 1 on the other side, which would be IK. Segment IK. Don't forget, you have to have a segment bar above it, or else it means the distance from I to K and you get marked wrong. So that's all you're doing for this top, all these right here, until you get to, if we look on the right side over here, we have 13, 15, and 17. There's another set of problems. And then here you're writing a congruent statement that matches up. The two triangles being congruent. We'll do one of each. So right here, mark all the congruent sides and angles. So we see that angle B is congruent to angle M, 1 arc each. D, 2 arcs, so we already used 1 to L, 2 arcs. And then finally C to K, 3 arcs to 3 arcs. Okay. Now, as a side note, you technically, if I wanted to say these two angles were congruent and I'd already used 1, I'm up to 2, you might see it drawn like this. They'll have 1 arc and then they'll put 2 hash marks like this. That is the exact same thing as having 2 arcs. So one way of writing congruency is using hash marks around 1 single arc like this. So then if it was the third one, I'd have 3 hash marks and 3 hash marks around that single angle. Or as I'm showing it here, 3, 1, 2, and 3 arcs completely on its own. Okay. So just so you know, just in case you happen to see that somewhere in a worksheet or test from DCAS or Edulastic, you understand what they mean. All right, so there I did the 3 angles, but don't forget, it says mark the congruent sides and angles. I've only done the angles. You got to do the sides also. So there's 3 of each. It's a triangle. It's 3 and 3, total of 6 parts. If it was a quadrilateral, you'd have 4 and 4 for a total of 8 parts. Okay, so now let's go ahead and mark the congruent sides. So I take the first 2 here, goes to the first 2 here, BD to ML, BD to ML. You can either look up here at the congruent statement to make sure you're doing it right, or I can just look at my arcs and I say the first I'm going to mark is between arcs 1 and 2, so I do between arcs 1 and 2 in the second triangle. And then I'm going to go between, I'll put 2 hash marks between 2 and 3, so it must be 2 hash marks between 2 and 3 over here. And then I have 3 hash marks between 1 and 3 and 3 hash marks between 1 and 3. Now I've named the corresponding sides. Notice total of 6 pieces. You're getting quizzed on that. Not only to write them down, I mean to put the markings on the triangles, but also to write them out in words piece by piece. So I'd have angle B is congruent to angle M. Go through all 3 angles, and then, so I'm just doing one as an example, and then the 3 sides. So I'd say segment BD is congruent to segment ML in corresponding order, and I'm just doing one of the sides. Okay, you go through all 3. Okay, so you're going to get quizzed on writing out with the statements and also putting the markings on the drawing like I just did there. All right, lastly, write the congruent statement that shows that the triangles in each pair are congruent. We'll do number 9. Okay, so I'm going to write a triangle. And then you can choose the order. There's no set order you have to do, and you have to do alphabetical order. You can choose it. So if I do 1, if I go in the order of 1, 2, and then there should have been 3. Maybe there is 3 in there. I guess there is. You can't hardly see it, but it almost looks like it was shaded. But 1, 2, 3. So if I do that, that's PQR, and that just happens to be in alphabetical order for that triangle. It's congruent to, now remember, I'm going 1, 2, 3. So where's the 1 arc in this one? Q. Where's the 2 arcs? P. Oops, P, not R. P. And where's the third arc? D. And that would be my triangle congruence statement showing the 2 triangles are congruent. Okay, and you'll do that on your quiz as well. So the front and back of this sheet is one quiz. Okay, knowing this inside and out. This is very important. Okay, that will go ahead and do it. 13 minutes.